And I'm going to open the floor up to questions, comments, and sort of, start a discussion here a little bit. I think we have some time, don't we? Oh, yes. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
When you use your checklist and identify that people in your life or yourself has these characteristics, what do? And you said BPD. What does that mean?
BPD means borderline personality disorder, and that checklist comes from a most awesome layperson's book called Stop Walking on Eggshells, which I highly recommend to anybody that feels that they may be going through a situation with somebody who's creating crazy in their life. Okay? The thing that's really wonderful about narcissism and borderline personality behavior is that it really truly makes us think we're going nuts. They are supreme crazy makers. And that's one of the things that's lovely about energy vampires, is that that's what their job is. So when you look at that list, and Wendy Bahari, and because it's there in narcissism, it's there for borderline personality, it's there for bullying and verbal abuse. One of the examples I give in the book is I had a client, a young woman, who was in a relationship, and she was realizing as she and her partner were going through and using spiritual transformation processes, she was able to identify that she may not necessarily be classified or diagnosed borderline, but when she looked at that checklist, she was able to say, oh, I'm doing that, I'm doing that, I'm doing that. Ooh, I don't like this about myself at all. I'm doing these things, and this is not good. She was able to take the information, and as painful as it was, able to use it and acknowledge that aspect of herself, that shadow part of herself, and then do something about it. And I'm proud to say she's still in that process today. I had another client who, in relationship with her husband, really who was extremely supportive. He's a saint. She, through our work, began to identify that she felt like maybe she was exhibiting some narcissistic behavior. And so from that perspective, I was able to give her that information, and we worked through it. And again, it was the same type of thing. She was able to say, I'm doing these things. In fact, it was a great process for her because she took the book home, she and her husband sat down to read it together, and her husband just laughed through the entire book because he realized that he wasn't crazy, he really was experiencing these behaviors from her, and hallelujah, everybody's validated. So it really did a lot to save their marriage and take it to a whole new level, and she is still working through that process right now. So it's not fun when we identify that we're behaving these ways. And all of us, at some point in our lives, behave in the ways that are described on those lists. We all do it because we get into places where we're not fully funded in our own personal power, right? We all have it. I get into an accident on January 4th, and hey, I tell you, the last month, I have not been fully funded in my power because I got totally knocked out of my body. So what do I need to do to get back? And so I needed to rely on, having other people feed me energy. That's a healthy situation. There's nothing wrong with that because as healthy spiritual people, we understand that there's an energy exchange that's going to take place. And that even though I might be the person who's taking more energy at the moment, I know how to get my own personal power back, and I know what that means, and then I can feed back to you when you need it. And so there's a healthy exchange of energy that occurs in those interactions. But with people who don't have an ability to be fully funded in their personal powers, that never happens. If we were to see that energy that's occurring between, let's say, ourselves right now and this group of people, what we'd see right now is we'd see this bubble of energy, this huge, gorgeous bubble of energy, and we would see energy flying around that is well balanced between every single person in this room. And we know that because for the most part, every single person in this room right now feels safe. You feel respected. You feel trust for the person sitting next to you. And that's how you know that there's a wonderful energy exchange occurring that's an equal energy exchange between each of us. When you're in a dissonant relationship with someone, and they're in that process of not being in their own personal power, they need your energy. And so, if we were to see that energetically, that's not a good exchange, because what's actually happening then is that that person is literally dragging, is literally pulling energy out of me to fund themselves. And they can't exist without having those energy batteries around them, because they don't know how to be in their own personal power. And that leads me to a quote that I had wanted to put in the book and had failed to do so. The Dalai Lama, in a book that came out a couple of years ago, I couldn't remember the title, quotes Shantideva, who is the author of A Guide to the Boddhisattva Way of Life. And this is what he says: "For a practitioner of love and compassion, an enemy, or an energy vampire, is one of the most important teachers. Without an enemy, you cannot practice tolerance, and without tolerance, you cannot build a sound basis of compassion. So in order to practice compassion, you should have an enemy." Okay, I didn't make this up. This is Buddhist philosophy we're talking about right here, okay? Remember, Jesus was a Buddhist. When you force your... Is anybody shocked by that? Oh, okay, good. When you face your enemy who is going to hurt you, that is the real time to practice tolerance. Therefore, an enemy is the course of the practice, or the cause of the practice of tolerance. Tolerance is the effect or result of an enemy. Gives you a whole new perspective on what happens when you move into chaos and you're in a chaotic relationship with someone, doesn't it? To be able to view that person with compassion and tolerance, and to have compassion and tolerance for yourself.
Yes, and it also makes perfect sense that there's people that I know that that I had figured out, they're in there to take energy from me. But I also recognize that in that compassion, I have to know myself enough to know that there are days when I can be with this person, and there are days when I have to avoid this person, because I'm not always 100% on my game. And to be in the same room with this person, I got to be 100% on my game, because I have to hold my energy and be firm in who I am, and yet have compassion for that person. And the good thing is to be a consciousness that you can recognize what is going on energetically, and recognize, learn more about yourself, so that you can be able to contain your energy.
And that's right, and that's why we don't avoid our enemies, because that's exactly what they're here to do for us. They're here to be our teachers. They're here to be that person.
But there's days when if there's someone that's coming on and on, and that's going to be in your life
for a while.
What, there's days you can be with them, and there's days you I know.
I'm sitting right here.